All right, we start here. The state this week touched on, amongst others, the common contact of accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi. Now, it's Ntanzi's version that he does not know accused number 3 to 5. These are the alleged gunman, lookout man, as well as a coordinator in the alleged murder plot.
Now, the cell phone records of accused number 3, Mr. Ncube, for the number ending 8169 as per Exhibit DD5, in brackets F Roman figure 1, indicate that number ending 8169 was in contact with the number ending 1239.
My lord, I have no business between contacts between Ncube and Lungisani. I was not there, and what it is that they were discussing, I don't know.
States that Mtokosizi Sipozonke Mapisa, accused number 4, on the number ending 3801, contacted Fiso Kuhlentuli, accused 5, on the number ending 51239, 127 times, 125 outgoing calls and 2 SMSs. So the point here being that all the accused have got this number ending 1239 as a common contact. Sorry, except for accused number 5.
As always, I'm joined by my guest, Itu Mukwena, a regular commentator and friend of the show, as well as Alton Hart. He is a legal analyst, but also with the UJ Clinic Law. He is, of course, an attorney who will help us, map out the evidence and make sense of the legalities when it comes to this issue. Itu, let me start with you. The issue around the common contacts with Bongani Ntanzi, the state obviously wrapping up its cross-examination, but this obviously points to whether or not he knows the accused person.
Yes, Linda, thank you for having me back. I'm back when I go Yes, I think it was very important for Advocate Baloyi to lead that evidence to say that, yes, we might not have direct communication between you and accused 3, 4, and 5, but we do have indirect communication where you guys are communicating with people of common contact. So I think that was very important. And in that, he did solidify the communication and actually knowing accused number 3, 4, and 5, because Ntanzi has stood on the fact that he doesn't know accused number 3, doesn't know accused number 4. With accused number 5, it's a bit tricky because at some point he did admit to knowing him, but not really knowing him from seeing him, but not really knowing him. But I think that evidence that was led by Advocate Baloyi did actually assist in actually showing that these guys, given the circumstances that have occurred, given the evidence that we have learned, these contacts that they have, and they communicate with these contacts over a period of time, which shows that if we take that into consideration, it's possible that they actually know each other.
Yeah, and when we look at the case entirely, Itu, and what we've heard, be it in the confession statements or from what Bongani Ntanzi has said himself, is the state trying to say that there is one way, or there could be a number of ways that Bongani Ntanzi could know these co-accused? Because if you go back to the confession, who made contact with who to get Bongani Ntanzi to come to the hostel, do you think that's essentially what the state is trying to say? That however way you look at it, there is a contact that ultimately links him with his co-accused?
Correct. That's exactly what I think. I think Baloyi was actually giving us the window to his argument. He is going to argue that though they might have not contacted each other, also we don't know, we're assuming because we don't have the Section 205s from 2014, though we don't have direct linkage in terms of cell phone, but the fact that they have common contacts, the fact that they were in Fosloras, Ntanzi, you actually dance for this team, a Fosloras team. You guys are from the same area, even though you're trying to deny it. There's multiple ways. We're also seeing the Section 205s, the aerial evidence shows that these guys were here at this point 30 days after the incident happened. Ncube was here. So what were you guys discussing? Possible that you actually know each other.
All right, let me go to you, Elton. I mean, legally speaking, where do we then place this kind of evidence and the implications of, you know, what the state is trying to do with the common context? Because again, the allegation or the version is that Bongani Ntanzi does not know some of his co-accused, one. But secondly, when you extend it to, for example, accused number 5, he also denies being the alleged coordinator. So legally speaking, where do we place this kind of evidence?
Now, if one looks at the state's evidence, and it's unfortunate at this point in time, the state does not have direct evidence clearly. When you look at the cell phone data, the photos, those type of things, it's and even the cell phone triangulation, it's a lot of circumstantial evidence where the state is now saying, given this information that we have, there's no other inference that can be drawn but that you were in forced arrest at the date on 26 October 2014 when Senzo Meyiwa was killed. And hence, you guys should be involved in this. And then based on what Kelly Kumalo's sister testified that accused 1 and 2 were in the house. So then already that type of information, now they're trying to say, yes, circumstantial evidence say you weren't forced to arrest and these people identified you, and they're trying to now link and hook these two onto each other to say, we don't have direct evidence pertaining to your whereabouts, but somebody saw you and they identified you. And now here's your cell phone information that says you were no other place but in Posluris. And obviously, accused number 2, he sticks to his guns. And obviously, the state, I don't think just merely, yes, there's a lot of things that the state put to accused number 2, but still for me, it's circumstantial. It must be beyond reasonable doubt. And I'm not saying absolute doubt, but I'm still seeing the accused persons maybe bringing other alternative evidence or witnesses to come and testify. And you could see in the week also when in the re-examination where Advocate Ramusipili was now picking up on these things and actually going back to these things to try and rebut the state's circumstantial evidence that they wanted to reinforce, backing it up on the evidence that they already laid when they had their case going.
Yeah, and I mean, like you say, this is circumstantial evidence. So the picture now has to be looked at entirely, right? We have to look at other evidence, and this is what the court will look at, whether or not there is other pieces of the puzzle that support what the state is going for here.
Indeed, indeed. Obviously, the state has to package its offering or its case in such a way to say that here is, we have the witnesses, the 2 that we called that was in the house, they identified these gentlemen, and now we've got the circumstantial evidence. We say this is a crutch that what they said they saw in the house, this is a crutch leaning on it, and now bringing other crutches to actually support and say, court, this is the only reasonable explanation that you can draw from this evidence to say these 5 gentlemen, although not directly illustrated, they are linked to each other and they were in forced arrest at that time when Senzo Meyiwa was killed. So the only other inference that you can draw from this evidence is that they are guilty of the offense. And the state is now building in that crutches so that they can hold what Kelly's sister and Tokozizi testified in person, who was in the house, and obviously still looking at how they can dismantle the narratives or the alibis of the defense witnesses.
Yeah, and I mean, a bare denial, does it work? Does it suffice here when you look at what the state has mounted?
No, you cannot just say, no, I didn't do it. Remember, the state somehow, there is some prima facie evidence that these accused persons has to answer to. So there's not just like, okay, I can now say, no, I didn't do it, and then you do it. You can take that risk and say to the court, I'm not going to proffer or give another sort of evidence and just say and close my case, and the court can make a decision. But that's a very dangerous thing. But here on the face of it, there looks like there's prima facie evidence that these people know or were involved in what has happened on 26 October 2014, and they need to now give an answer. It might not be the answer that the state is looking for, but they need to give an answer, and then the court has to evaluate that answer that they're giving. Is it a reasonable explanation given what the state has put on the table? And then the court has to make a decision based on that.
Itu, let me come back to you because I want us to talk about, obviously, the length of the cross-examination and some of the things that the state touched on as we wrap up the issue around its cross-examination. It was quite lengthy, weeks and weeks of cross-examination on a number of aspects. I want to know from you what in the evidence that has come out either in cross-examination or in re-examination, but I want us to stay to cross-examination, did you find to stand out for you?
Oh, it was quite a lot, Linda. Ntanzi was on that chair for a very long time. For me, the overwhelming evidence was the family that was in contact with Ntanzi's cell phone. It didn't make sense to me that a few days after Ntanzi is arrested, his mom is calling and somebody's answering. And the next day she's calling. So there's a continuous communication. If she is talking to the police, why does she keep calling back? And I need Ntanzi to answer that for me. For me to say, oh, okay, no, the police probably had your phone because you've given me a reasonable explanation. Apart from a bare denial, you have actually explained that, you know, my mom kept calling because A, B, and C, or you call your mother. You know, another evidence that actually stood up for me was the doctor's evidence. That the evidence says that Ntanzi did not have any signs of torture or trauma. And Ntanzi has explained how he was traumatized, you know, how he was tortured from the 18th, the 19th. Those signs should have been there. And if a doctor is going to say that, I did not see that, and he was not cornered or they didn't put anything that Ntanzi would have reasonably said to that. And his defense is that well, he said nothing about torture. But the doctor did put that on the evidence. That's something that Ratha is going to have to consider. That a doctor said, I examined this person from waist up. I did not see any kind of torture. That's going to, and obviously the AVL.
Yeah.
AVL evidence.
Yeah, and I want you to hold that thought. And of course, when we come back out, and I'll give you the first bite at some of the issues that are raised by Itu. Let's take a quick ad break. We'll get more into this evidence when we come back. Welcome back, and thank you for choosing to stay with us. If you've just joined us, you're watching Inside the Courtroom, the Senzo Meyiwa Murder Trial Wrap, and I'm Linda Nisi. Now, we continue to reflect on the evidence from this past week. But first, I want us to go to the WhatsApp line to see what you have been saying. Annie, who is a regular on the show, says, "Hi, Linda. Ntanzi's case is disastrous. By his own admission, he led no new evidence." That is Annie there, who has sent us a WhatsApp message reflecting, of course, on the evidence of Bongani Ntanzi as the state wraps up its cross-examination. You can also send us your messages on 072-110-5584. That number is on your screen, so make sure that you even send us your videos. We will play them here on the show. We will get my panelists to engage on some of the questions that you have relating to the evidence that we've heard so far. So make sure that you get in touch with us. Now, at the end of the state's cross-examination, the defense started its re-examination. A moment perhaps to clarify some of the points that have been or that have come up during their cross-examination. Take a look.
When did these two occasions occur?
During these days when I had applied or requested for unpaid leave.
Now, the leave form records the reason for taking the leave days as personal problems. Is that an accurate description of why you took the leaves?
It was not an accurate recording.
All right, I'm still joined by my guest in studio, Idumukwena, who is a commentator, follows this case regularly, and you would have seen her on her social media platforms giving regular commentary on the day-to-day happenings. We also have an attorney from the UJ Law Clinic who's providing legal analysis, Alton Hart, joining us via our video link. Let me start in studio again. Itu, the clarity-seeking questions. Obviously, re-examination is confined to points that may have come out of cross-examination. But the issue around, Mjiako was one of the issues that he touched on, right? But also at the heart of his case, the issue around the leave and why he took leave at the time when Senzo Meyiwa was killed. Do you think, as somebody who's been following this case, that there's been clarity that has been given in that re-examination?
Linda, I'm left more confused after Mr. Ramosipala's clarification questions. Ntanzi has not provided any details as to, in terms of the leave that he says he took to go perform these big ceremonies. He should have remembered these when he was under cross-examination. Baloyi had to push and push and push. He kept saying, I went home to go do whatever. I'm a child at home. I have to look after cows. He was being so ambiguous with his answers. It was only when he was cornered by Baloyi did he then say, or did he then remember his evidence or the evidence that was put before that, hey, you had a huge ceremony for your child that you had to do. You also paid lobola. You got married that weekend. How is that not a reason for you to go home? And now you also, when you apply for this leave, you say you are attending to issues, problems. You're attending to problems at home. Very conflicting issues. And I needed clarity on that. Where are you standing with it, Ntanzi? Are you also going to bring somebody to also bring this clarity for me? Can I just accept that I'm confused for now, and you are going to bring one of the malumes that went to your in-laws to go pay lobola for you?
Alton, let me bring you into this conversation because, we've been following the evidence from the moment that the police said he had told them that he went to, he was at work. They followed up on that to a point where he says, okay, during this period, I was not in Gauteng, I was in KZN. There were these two ceremonies that needed to be performed. When we look at specifically the clarity that he provides, does it answer perhaps some of the questions that the court may want to know regarding the details of these two ceremonies that were performed? And I asked this, Alton, because earlier on I was just going back to some of the testimonies, and I came across a point on the 19th of March where he even says the 26th of October was not important to him. So he couldn't have remembered what really was happening. And one wonders, if you're going to lobola, Surely that day is important to you, or that period is important to you.
No, indeed. And for me, I think his legal representatives had to actually sort of have prepare him for that and actually make sure, unless this chap will come and actually bring, like Itu was saying, one of the Malumes who actually went to and do the Labola negotiations. We don't know. It might mean that he might call one of them and they might come and even bring the Lobola letters to the fore, saying that this is what I went to go do at this time, this period. Maybe even his elders from home, because he was doing the cleansing ceremony in terms of his customs back home for the child that passed on. If they would also come and actually give a reasonable explanation to say that this chap was around the house, it was more or less this times, then it would put another spin that the state has to deal with. But at this point in time, he did not go with specifically into that aspect to say, listen here, this is what happened. And although I know that the state bears the onus of proving beyond reasonable doubt, but I mean, for me now, that doubt is in the balance because he did not do himself favors by sort of half answering so in a, one can say, casual way.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be a little bit more clearer, so that you say, okay, 25, 26, it was around about 25, 26. And I mean, Lobola is a big thing
Yeah.
in African culture. You would know exactly when your in-laws or when your in-laws and your family met, but nonetheless, he can remedy that by actually getting one of the Malumes to come in and testify. But also on the state side, for me, the state closed their case, which is also for me something a little bit shaky on the state side. Is to these guys has constantly said Mjiako is not their lawyer, and the state absolutely refused to bring Mjiako, where you could have put that issue in bed to just say put the lawyer in the stand and say who gave you instruction, this date, that date. I spoke to this chap. Then we would have had also clarity where he says, I never gave him Giaco instruction. So now you have two contrasting versions here. And when it's like that, you have to give the benefit to the accused person, because then one needs to sit with that question. Why did the state says Giaco was your attorney at this point in time when these things were taken down? Why just not call the fella? Why not? So then it creates again doubt that favors the accused person.
Yeah, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. All due respect, Alton, I don't agree with that. Giaco represented Ntanzi more than 6 times. He has appeared on behalf of Ntanzi. So if he had no instruction to represent Ntanzi, Ntanzi would have said something. 6 times he has appeared on behalf of Ntanzi. If anyone is going to call Ntanzi, it cannot be the state. The state does not have the powers to call Mjiako if Mjiako already represented Ntanzi 6 times. Ntanzi is the one who needs to call Mjiako, not the state.
Yeah, and Elton, Itu picks up on a point.
I need to come in there.
Yes, that's where I'm coming.
Itu is missing me here.
Yeah.
I'm saying there is this issue that is questionable that Ntanzi puts. If the state wants to lock it down, and there's no way that the state can't call Mjiako.
Yeah.
The state is dominant leaders, they can call. They can call because Mjiako's instructions, whatever it is, it's done. He became done with the mandate that was given to Ntanzi. So I'm saying, just to lock that down, they could have called this chap and say, I had instructions, and that was it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying what Itu think I'm saying. I'm saying just lock down the issue, then you know that one, it's no longer even something that the court might linger with when they make a decision.
So you're saying it should just, not that there isn't really evidence that the state led in regards to the issue of Mjiako, because there are appearances that it is making reference to. So you're saying what would then seal it for the state is to call Mjiako, who will then confirm, you know, what the state is saying. I want to come to this question now around sealing it. Do you think by just a bare denial from Ntanzi, it then puts that version of the state on shaky ground?
No, a bare denial would not be what he needs to do. He needs to also offer a sort of half a version. He can't just say, no, I never appointed him. He needs to offer a version to say maybe on the first appearance, I asked this chap, who is he, who appointed him, and he didn't give me answers. He avoided me. Not to just say, I never dealt with this chap and then leave it at that. You need to sort of have, indicate on various occasions that I've sort of half engaged. You can't just do a bare denial. But again, for me, the state could have just cemented it to just call this chap and get it off the table to say this is no longer an issue that needs needs the court's attention.
Yeah, and to be fair to Ntanzi, he also does say that Mjiako said to him he was sent by his sister.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So those are the issues that came up during Ntanzi's cross-examination to say, I did not appoint this person. I personally did not give this person, instructions, but this person says they came through my sister.
Now, here, Linda, for me, now we speak about ethics in our profession. If I am the client, nobody else but me can give you instructions. So if my sister, because she's concerned about me, gives you instructions, it's still not my instructions. So we need to get that one clear.
Yeah.
And if he's saying that I never gave this guy, and there is evidence that says the sister appointed him on what the sister thought it's the instructions.
Yeah.
But if this chap said this was never my instructions, then it's ethics in our profession to say that who is really my client?
Yeah.
Mjiako had to acquaint himself who's my client, and it's Ntanzi.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's not that he was not appointed, but that is the things that we as lawyers need to make sure to see who is the client and who gives us instructions, and whatever instructions he's giving us, is it allowed to be exercised?
Yeah, it's interesting, Elton, because the evidence of Vivian Cronier, who says she asked him if this person was representing him, and he confirmed.
Yes.
So, we have now another conflicting version from a magistrate who says this person was in the room when we took the confession statement, and this is the person that, according to the accused, was representing him there. So wouldn't Ntanzi have said there before the magistrate that I don't know this person?
No, he had a possibility to say that, but I'm just saying, for me, it's just like you do the basics. You just bring a person, you eliminate. Then this back and forth, because now we've had him on the stand for I think it's 4 weeks. That's the longest cross-examination of an accused person I've seen. And we could have sort of avoided that by you just lock in the critical person. Bring Mjiako, just say, your mandate was terminated, so done. Just say, was this? Yes, I was. You don't need to disclose what was your mandate, but just to say, this guy appointed me as his lawyer, then it's out. Vivian Cronier's testimony is there to say he didn't confirm. So then it's done. Then he can't really come and say, then he needs to now come up with more to say why the circumstantial evidence of the state placing him in forcible arrest, and then eventually link him to the, is not the only explanation that can be drawn from this evidence, but there's more explanations, and he's not doing that at this point in time. But I'm saying there is these options that you, as a lawyer, you always must just look and say, these are possibilities that can come out of here.
All right, I want us to take a quick ad break, because when we come back, we get into, the other evidence that the state cross-examined Bongani Ntanzi, and we look at how the clarity-seeking questions went for him. So make sure you stay tuned and engage with us via social media platforms. Welcome back and thank you for choosing to stay with us. Let's check in with your poll question. And now we will ask you whether you think Bongani Ntanzi dismounted the evidence against the state case. Those options are on your screen. Yes, he's innocent. 36% of you saying he is innocent. No, he's guilty. 43% of you saying that, as well as 21% saying you're waiting for other witnesses. Interesting figures coming through. So make sure that you engage with that poll question as we have robust debates around what actually transpired in the Senzo Meyiwa trial. On the X platform, we have @Togo_Ndlovu who says the prosecution has successfully established Ntanzi's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So those are the comments that are coming through via the social media platform X. Remember, we are also on WhatsApp, and we did that call out on WhatsApp. Get in touch with us, 072-110-5584. Send us your videos, send us your messages, send us your questions. We'll make sure that we, tackle them with Alton Hart as well as Itumukwena, who are following this case and, of course, are getting into the evidence that we heard so far. All right, let's continue looking at the testimony of Bongani Ntanzi, who has been on the stand since early February. Now, at the center, again, of his testimony is that he has nothing to do with Meyiwa's murder and that he was not in Gauteng when the former Bafana Bafana captain was killed. Now, in its lengthy cross-examination, the state also probed him on this version. Take a look.
We asked you specifically as to what was the purpose of taking unpaid leave and going home, and you said there was nothing specific. You only wanted to do general duties, and you mentioned the tending of cattle. But now you say the main reason why you went home was because of these ceremonies, the cleansing and the paying of lobola. These two are irreconcilable.
My Lord, I'm repeating that this question was not posed to me, or let me say, yesterday this question was not posed in the manner that it is being posed right now. Back home, my Lord, I've got needs back home. And also when I was asked as to why this particular reason was written, where it says personal problems, I did say that I've got needs that concern myself as well as my biological parents. I'm now back home, and my father saw that I arrived the previous night. So is he now expected to wake up in the morning and go and open up for the cattle? That doesn't happen. That's impossible because I am there. I'm the one that has to wake up and go and open up for the cattle. As well as my Lord is taking the spade, I would then clean where I see that there is some grass, just to clean there. It's my duty.
Let's continue this robust conversation, and I'm joined in studio by Itu Mukwena. Itu, I saw you itching when it comes to the issue of Mjiako, because it really is quite a contentious issue. I'll give you that opportunity to just respond to what Alton was saying.
You know what? I think the state has laid enough evidence when it comes to Mjiako, and I'm just waiting to see what Ntanzi is going to bring to rebut the evidence that has been brought by the state. It would have been nice for the state to call Mjiako, but I still don't know what would that prove for them, because they have already laid evidence that shows that Ntanzi was represented by Mjiako in court. He was with a magistrate taking his confession with Mjiako. If anyone else has anything to prove, is Ntanzi, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, let's now get into what we've just heard now. And I keep bringing this issue of the alibi out, because if Ntanzi is able to establish a solid alibi, and if his story is anything to go by and the court believes what he's saying, right, it would not mean anything for the state, right? Yeah. It would mean the state suffers a blow, not just on what they're saying about his whereabouts, but mainly on the main case against him, because you can't be in two places at the same time. Do you think today the court knows where Bongani Ntanzi was on the 26th of October, and he has given an explanation as to the reason why, looking at also the issue around the bank records? that came, and the version that came from those issues of the bank records, I know they're in dispute, but the issue around the loan that was supposed to fund why in the first place he was there. We've already heard him in this bite that we've just played talking about needs that needed to be attended to.
I think the court is at sea, Linda. We don't know. The court doesn't know where Ntanzi was, because Ntanzi says he took leave at work to go and do these big ceremonies. Therefore, he could have never been in Joburg. But initially, when he gave us the leave evidence, he says that HR is the one that came to Ntanzi and approached him and told him that, hey, your days are about to be expire. You need to take these days. Those days were allocated to him. So how do you get days allocated to you and they must still correspond with these two events that you have had plans for months? Because, I mean, if you're going to pay Lobola, you send a letter months before you go there. So you already know that you have a commitment, that you have to be in KZN. So for you not to have applied for this leave and waited for HR to come to you and approach you and ask you if you are going to take these days, and they decide for you the days that you're going to take, it doesn't correlate with you actually being in KZN for these two events. Secondly, you say that your bank statement, when you were in Nongoma on the 26th, you went to a branch. Inside a branch, you went in and you made transactions. Now, these transactions are not appearing on your bank statement. This bank statement was admitted as a prima facie evidence, right? Ntanzi has every right to dispute it, right? But Ntanzi disputes this statement now during cross-examination, right? He had the statement, he had ample time to go through the statement and say, my lord, this number that's on the statement, it's not my number. I did not put this number there. My lord, these references that are on here, I normally get bonuses. I don't see the references that are normally allocated to me on my bank statement. He doesn't do that. He waits until cross-examination. Now, according to Section 236, if you are going to dispute prima facie evidence, you need to do it immediately. You need to say, court, please wait, let's adjourn, let me go look at this evidence so that I can see if it's actually it. Now, if we are going to wait until now you're being cross-examined, in fact, we waited until the re-examination because it's Ramsipilo who then led Ntanzi and said, Ntanzi, tell us, what are the points that you're actually disputing these statements on? He named two things. He said the references that they've used here don't appear, are not the references that I know. He also referenced the number. Ramasipele then says there are missing transactions. Ntanzi has not mentioned the missing transactions. Ntanzi has not said anything about going to Nongoma and going into that branch and doing those transactions. He hasn't said anything about that. And finally, he had this big event. He cannot name one person that was there. He has not given us those details. We need details. We need clarity. Your whole entire family was there. Baloy asked, can you tell us who you were with? He said, I can't tell you. Those are my family's issues. You are being charged with murder. You need to convince this court that you were not here on the 26th. You were not in Vosloorus. You need to give some details, Ntanzi, but you're not providing those details. And now his re-examination has come and gone, and we still don't have that clarity. Now all we can do is await a witness that will give us those details.
Yeah, and let me come to you, Alton. You know, one of the first issues that the state started with when it came to the issue of the alibi is that he never testified about his whereabouts during his evidence in chief. Would this have been a perfect opportunity for him to sort of lay the ground for the court? Because ultimately, this case boils down to the 26th of October. He himself says, don't ask me about anything else that happened you know, post-2014 or the 26th. The issues here are in relation to this particular date, right? Would that have been an opportunity to sort of lay the ground, to dictate the narrative around where he was, what he was doing, and not wait for the state to say, okay, let's look for the loan that perhaps was mentioned by your attorney, putting it to other witnesses, and which is what the court previously heard. Do you think there was a missed opportunity from the first instance when he was on the stand testifying evidence in chief to give those granular details that will ultimately be supported by whoever that will come?
And Linda, it's now you're going to make me speak about other legal practitioners, and I don't really want to go in there, but I always held the view that there were certain things during the state's case that my colleagues did not canvass with the state's witnesses that was critical for the defense of these 5 chaps. They had to canvass with the state's witnesses, which they did not do. And that already sort of half put the defense teams on the back foot, because the state's witnesses were there and they could canvass these things. And there was a lot of things. I mean, when Mugane was there, when this Gininda was there was a lot of things that would have changed the direction of this case completely if it was put to them. And then now coming back to when you have your chance in evidence in chief, you can now say, this is the state's case. They say I was there. Now you just say, on that day, I was somewhere else. You could have locked it down in there with your examination in chief, and then the state has to come under cross-examination and say, what are they going to say? Because you challenged the state's witnesses when they said you were in force Loras 1, 2, 3. You gave another version. Now under re-examination, in the cross-examination, now the state is sort of half confined to what they put to you and their witnesses and your alibi. And that would have been a totally different outcome. But I don't want to say my colleagues but there was missed opportunities for the defense teams when they were dealing with the state's witnesses in their cross-examination of state's witnesses. And eventually when these guys came to now testify in examination in chief, there was again a missed opportunity there. But that's their way of thinking. I would have done it differently, but I don't want to criticize my colleagues. They have maybe a strategy that they're pushing in the background that I would not know of.
Yeah, and I mean, the issues around the missing puzzle when it comes to the bank statement, which is obviously in dispute. But you also have the evidence out of Zandi Khumalo. You also have the evidence of Tumelo Madlala, who said, we saw this person. We were tussling with this person, right? Mm-hmm. These are 2 witnesses who were at the scene of crime. And then prior to that, there is the evidence of Constable Sizwe Zungu, who says, this person was there on the 26th of October, dressed in this particular fashion, right, at the hostel. And these are 2 critical points, right, of this particular evidence that he was there. Eyewitnesses who say, I saw him earlier. Constable Sizwe Zungu does not say that he went to kill Senzo, right, because that's not his evidence. His evidence is that this is where I saw him. And they disappeared later, and they came back, and this is what I saw. Right? And then you have these 2 who were in the house, Tumelo and Zandi, who say, we saw this person. But also, we need not forget about how the statement of Thabang Makeleni finds its way in, which gives the issue of the description, which is one of the things that Bongani Ntanzi also had to contend with during this cross-examination. In terms of all of this evidence, do you think that there has been enough explanation to the court from the man himself?
No, and the thing is, hence I'm saying I don't want to go into how my colleagues dealt with the thing from the get-go. And I mean, there was a shift in gears because there was different legal practitioners also involved in this matter, and they, you don't get any lawyer that thinks like the other one, so they most probably had different strategies on how they want to approach the case. But if one has to go back and you jog down memory lane to deal with Tumelo Madlala, deal with Zandulo Khumalo, I would have totally dealt with them differently. And obviously, I would have placed a lot of emphasis on the doctor that actually, I think it was accused number 2, that they actually went to go check if he had dental something with his teeth, put in gold and stuff like that. I would have dealt with that decisively, because that is something significant that you could have said, but identity, to place it in issue, to say, yes, you saw somebody might look or have similar features like this chap, but the one thing that exonerates him was their dental things. I would have focused heavily on that and then come to the other parts where you say now with Zungu, because Zungu was a person that actually just brought circumstantial to say, on this day, this is what, then I would have canvassed a lot of other things that I don't want to mention here, because Zungu had a cousin also, that was also a naughty cousin. I would have canvassed other things with him as well to just sort of half see where I can drive with his credibility pertaining to his evidence. That would have been my strategy, looking at this case. And I've seen Zungu, and for me, I would have dealt with Zungu decisively if I was going to cross-examine him. But I don't want to say. My colleagues might have a strategy, and they know how they best run their case. But I've seen some of the things that they left unchallenged from those three witnesses.
All right, let's take a quick ad break because in the previous segment we ate up a lot of time. So let's take a quick ad break. When we come back, we look ahead, right? We look ahead at what is going to happen because Bongani Ntanzi will be calling his witnesses and one wonders who exactly he will call. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back. It's the final leg of Inside the Courtroom, the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. Let's check in with your WhatsApp messages and see what you've had to say on that platform. Deboho Podile from Mahikeng says, "Hi Linda, I've listened to Bongani Ntanzi and have come to a conclusion that he's guilty as charged. I believe he is lying to the court." So that is Deboho Podile from Mahikeng, all the way in the northwest. We also have Anonymous who says, "Hi, I'm sorry, Linda, but the doctor only looked at his teeth. He was a dentist. Ntanzi didn't have his phone. The police took it. How could he have called his mother when they had the phone?" All right, so then we also have JB who says, "Hi, Linda. I really would like to know the view about Ntanzi not answering questions but making long statements. He put Baloyi on the witness stand and be the one asking questions and also distancing himself from what the lawyers said were his instructions." Okay, so that's a message there from JB, which forms part of a number of the messages that came through via our WhatsApp line. And I want to go back to Alton Hart and start with that last question because that would deal more with, you know, the legal aspect and what a court really looks into, Alton, when it comes to how a witness answers questions, whether or not they're evasive, they're argumentative, and whether or not they give the answers that they give, but also the issue around the versions that were being given, distancing themselves from, you know, the versions that were put by his lawyers.
No, indeed. And the thing is, like, I've seen like different instructions filtering throughout the process, that there was instructions, and there was a couple of occasions when Ntanzi actually distanced himself from certain things that was put as versions to the state's witnesses. And that for me already puts you on shaky ground. Now, looking at Ntanzi's way of answering, I would have coached him better to say, "Listen, yeah, my man, if you give an answer, try it be plain English or plain Zulu or whatever you're going to use that is comfortable for you, to be short and sweet. Do not give these long, elaborate answers, because long, elaborate answers solicit further explanation, further questions from the prosecution side." And he always goes on to giving paragraphs and paragraphs. Yes, there is some answers that you need to sort of have elaborate a little bit more. But yet to wait for the questions, listen nicely to the questions, and then answer the questions with sweet answers where they ask you, where were you on the 26th of October? Then you say, I was in KwaNongoma. What were you doing there? Then you can say, lobola and the child's ceremony. You don't need to go and actually sort of try and answer in a circle to say it's better to ask another accused person. That the court sees as evasive behavior and saying not to say there's accused number 3, you can ask him. If you don't know, you genuinely don't know, you say, I really don't know. I cannot offer you an answer, but this is my side from what I know from this little bit, but not to just sort of try and avoid an answer. Then the court sees already that you cannot be trusted, and then it speaks to your credibility, and it might then make a credibility finding against you eventually.
Yeah, I mean, even on social media platforms, we saw those, one would call them AI images of Ntanzi robed. And, and one wonders, from somebody who follows the case, how did that appear to you? The answers that he was giving on the stand, do you find that he was answering the questions that he was asked, or he was being argumentative and evasive?
I found Ntanzi to be very argumentative and evasive. And also, he was a bit too personal with Baloyi. Like, he was not addressing the evidence, he was addressing Baloyi straight, And I felt like he didn't do himself justice. There were points where he could have just kept quiet, like the Carlos question, He was asked about Carlos and he responded and said, no, I don't know Mube. Like, now you're adding other things to the mixture and you're getting yourself into more trouble. So if you had just said, no, I don't know, or kept quiet, and I don't know why Mr. Ramusipile stood and said that the reason why this cross-examination has taken so long, it's because how Baloyi is asking questions to Ntanzi. I saw it the other way around. Baloyi is trying to answer Ntanzi's questions and get clarity, give Ntanzi clarity, so he can answer his initial questions. We've been going around and around in circles, repeating evidence because Ntanzi is taking us around in circles. I don't think he did himself justice. Yeah. And yeah, I agree with Elton. He should have been better coached.
Yeah, and just lastly, in your view, Itu, what is Ntanzi's biggest hurdle now, right? Going into his witnesses, what do you think he needs to focus more on, and the kind of witnesses that maybe would be of assistance when we map out his case and look at what he's told the court? What do you think would actually quite help him get to where he wants to go?
Well, as things stands right now, Ntanzi's biggest issue for me is his alibi. We don't know where he was. So he needs to bring people that were with him on the 26th of October. So his family in KZN will have to come down. Ntanzi claims that he did not have his phone. So I would call all the people that were communicating with the police on Ntanzi's phone to come and testify and show the court that actually I am correct, I never had my phone. And I would also call Mujiako. Why wouldn't I call Mujiako? And lastly, I would ask the court to play that record because I did not say anything on that record. There's nothing to say. So my lord, please play the music for me. Please.
All right, Elton, you heard Itu's wish list of the evidence. So according to you, where to from here for Ntanzi? Who should he call? What is his biggest problem at the moment?
Now, for me, like Itu said, for me, it's like he needs to find him on the other side of the Tugela Plaza, more to the east side of the Tugela Plaza than to the western side. Because if he finds him more to the western side, it means it's Foslura's side. Then he's got a problem. So for me, he needs to find himself in KwaNongoma. So he needs to bring evidence that places him in KwaNongoma at that specific time when Senzo Meyiwa was shot and killed. If he can bring evidence, and it's direct evidence, not hearsay evidence, something tangible that shows here is this chap in KwaNongoma opening the crawl gate so that his father can sleep, taking the spade and taking out the grass, and then eventually going to Lobola, his future wife, then he has something to create doubt in the state's mind that he was involved in the actual event on the day. But that doesn't place him out of danger, because you can sit in Cape Town and still be involved in committing a crime, because you can be either an organizer or something, because
Yeah.
the state is already trying to prove
Yeah.
that there was indirect communication between these chaps. So it doesn't put him completely out of harm's way, but at least it will say that he was not one of the trigger men that was in the house, as Zandi Kumalo and Longwet
Tumelo Madlala.
Tumela Madlala saying he was in the house. So
Yes.
that would most probably put him in less of harm's way, but he still
Yeah.
needs to come and explain the other parts.
Yeah.
So that's why I see it.
Okay, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for those inputs, Edson Hart, as well as Itumu Gwena, who are helping us navigate the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial as it continues at the Pretoria High Court. Let's check in with your poll results now. We asked you whether you think Bongani Ntanzi has managed to dismantle the state's case against him. A whopping 46% of you saying no, he is guilty. So those are the results that are coming through from that poll question that we've been running throughout the show. Now, as we head into a new week, the expectation is that Bongani Ntanzi, as you've heard from my guests, will call his witnesses to testify in his defense. Those proceedings are expected to kick off on Monday at exactly 10 o'clock. We'll be watching them very, very closely. And of course, coming back to this table to give you a wrap of what happened throughout the week. But until then, have a good one.